Summertime, probably my favorite time of the year. It's great to see what's in the garden. Today's feature is going to be a tomato extravaganza with buffalo milk mozzarella, arugula, basil oil, and balsamic reduction. These are not just any tomatoes, these are heirloom tomatoes. A variety of purples, greens, reds. Heirloom meaning 50 years old is the seed. Tomatoes should be handled with care and with lots of love. I would imagine that people are going to learn today just how we take care of our tomatoes. I want to show you very clearly how we're going to core a tomato, slice the ends, and the key here is we're going to save all this trim, okay, because that trim will go into our vinaigrette. What I've done here, I've exposed the flesh of the tomato on the top and the bottom, and this is the area where we will season it with salt and pepper. Important that we slice the tomato a ½ inch thick and go for a variety. Here I'm starting with some yellows, purples. Again, a simple core. These tomatoes are typically not the cheapest on the market, so it's important we have a high yield. There's that trim we talked about. Opening the flesh, ½ inch thick. Serrated knife, which is critical. Trim the end. And I'll show you where that trim ends up in a few minutes. And then to finish it, I'm going to show you that we have a little variety of just standard teardrop or cherry tomatoes. You might ask, what's so significant about the colors, the shapes, and these varieties? Well, certainly there's an eye appeal. The fact that these are Michigan-grown tomatoes, ranging from the southwest corner of Michigan, west coast, even as far as the east coast of Michigan. Heirloom tomatoes have unusual names like purple Cherokee, green zebras, sunburst, mortgage lifters. These are seeds that, again, that are over 50 years old. And I would say flavor-wise, they're all very similar. Some slightly acidic than others, though, maybe a little bit sweeter than others. Some have more seeds. But I think that you'll see these are not your standard grocery store tomatoes that all had that same look and same size. And that's the beauty of these tomatoes, that we're not looking for just the perfect tomato, just the ripest. You can see that this tomato isn't your most normal looking, but certainly has a lot of flavor packed inside there. What's important here is that I'm showing you how we've laid the tomatoes out, not just for the camera, but for the fact that I need to season each of these tomatoes with kosher salt and black pepper. And what I'm using here is a technique we call feed the chickens. Raise the salt, finger high, bring the black pepper fingers a little bit lower. Remember, tomatoes are mostly water, so it's critical to season carefully, and don't be shy about the salt. A few extra steps of seasoning the tomatoes on both sides is critical. I wouldn't slice the tomatoes more than 2 hours ahead of time of planning on serving them. They tend to leach out too much of the water. Now that we have our tomatoes set aside, we'll move on to some of the supporting rolls. We talked earlier about the trim of the tomatoes. All that trim has a lot of flavor, and that flavor should never go to waste. So what I have here is an unusual contraption called a food mill, but if you didn't have one of these at home, you could use a blender. It would easily suffice. What I'm doing here is I'm just extracting the essence of all the tomato trim into a liquid, otherwise known as, guess what? Fresh tomato juice. And what better way to make a tomato vinaigrette than fresh tomato juice? The blender will be able to do the same thing, but what happens with the blender is that the blender creates a lot of air. Take a look here, 100% of just beautiful red tomato juice, slightly acidic, a great supporting role for the rest of the vinaigrette. Here we have fresh squeezed lemon juice, 2 tablespoons, apple cider vinegar, about 3 tablespoons, 2 cloves of garlic that have been mashed, finely chopped red onion, about ½ cup, sliced green onions, about ¼ cup. I have basil, 2 tablespoons, chives, good tablespoon, and last but not least, we're going to round it out with some fresh Italian parsley, 2 tablespoons. A touch of salt, black pepper. Again, critical to season throughout. As I marry these ingredients, the finishing touches would be olive oil. If you'd like, you can use some extra virgin. I think that extra virgin is a great necessity, but I wouldn't use too much because it can be a little bit strong. I still want to taste that vibrant tomato flavor of the vinaigrette. This vinaigrette will last about 2 days, 3 days max, just because of the fresh tomato juice. And you can see that the color will change dramatically by adding all the other ingredients. You're not going to have that vibrant red. Give it a quick taste. Just a touch of salt. And what I like about this dressing is that we've used, again, seasonal ingredients, basil, chives, parsley, and again, the trimming from the tomatoes is a great way of using all those end pieces. Over here I have actually buffalo milk mozzarella. This is actually buffalo milk from Water Buffalo in Fremont, Michigan. Again, a couple of slices, about half the thickness of the tomatoes. We talked about seasoning before. We season in layers, salt, black pepper, and then we're almost home. And to bring the finishing touches, I'm going to start with, again, that variety, that yellow, the purple, the green, some local arugula from a beautiful farm down the road. Touch of salt and pepper again. Some of these tomatoes. The vinaigrette. And just a gentle toss. I'll start with my purple tomato on the bottom, a little cheese, yellow tomato, the arugula, finishing with these little cherry tomatoes. Let the vinaigrette sort of cascade down the sides. This balsamic syrup is just a reduction of balsamic vinegar cooked down slowly for about an hour and a half. 2 cups would probably cook down to half a cup, and then it would add a little sugar just to sweeten it. And this is basil oil. The basil oil is leaves of basil that have been blanched in boiling salted water, cooled down in ice water, squeeze the water out, puree, add oil, touch of salt, let it sit overnight, and it sort of steeps like tea, and it gives you that bright green color.